Valley Church. Hope for those who have given up on church.
Hi folks, thanks for watching. We're into a series we're calling The Best Stuff Jesus Taught. And we're from Freedom Valley Church in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, just over the hill from your house. Love to hear from you. You could write me at g@freedomvalley.org. That'd be wonderful to hear from you in that way. Or if you want to write the church, write Freedom Valley Church, 3185 York Road, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Love to have you show up and visit here as well. If that works for you, that'd be wonderful. God bless you. Thanks for watching today. Hi folks, welcome back. So glad you're with me today. I'm talking about two powerful verses that Jesus gave as we consider some of the best things that he taught. Most of this comes from the Sermon on the Mount, his immediate teaching right after he started his ministry, where he set in place some huge ideas that up to today are major in shaping the way the church thinks. This one has to do with how he thinks about divorce, and it's huge. It is life-changing. It's different. I think it is unusual in what he thinks about divorce and how he thinks about it. And I'm going to be reading from Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 to 30 in just a moment. I want to invite you to go over there with me. I got a piece of humor for you. I have a joke here. Everybody sends me this joke as if I never used it before, so I got to use it again, I guess. A truck driver pulls up to a red light, and he sees a lady running up alongside his car, knocks on his window, and waits for him. He cranks down his window, and the lady says, "Hi, I'm Heather. I want you to know that you're losing some of your load." She runs back to her car again, feeling like she did her job. The trucker just sniffs and he drives on. Next light, here comes the lady again. He sees her coming. He doesn't know what to do with her, so he just waits for her and waits for her to be done. And she says, "Hi, I'm Heather. You're losing some of your load." Third light, same thing happens. He's getting tired of this. Fourth light, he thinks, "I got to think of something here." And so the fourth light, before the lady runs up to his window and knocks on his door, he jumps out, he runs back, and he says, "Hi, my name is Kevin. It's winter in Pennsylvania, and I'm driving a salt truck." So there you go. The lady thought he was losing part of his load. He was losing it on purpose. And in case you're having a winter that started a little something like that already, that joke is just for you. This is the best stuff Jesus taught. I'm calling it No Fault, where he talks about the ramifications of divorce and says some surprising things I wasn't taught, that I did not know. But if you trust the Word of God and you believe the Word of God, you can hear it say amazing things to our culture today about what's going on in our world. And I want to read it with you and just let the Holy Spirit imprint our minds with what he really says about divorce. Matthew chapter 5. "You've heard the law that says a man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce. But I say that a man who divorces his wife, unless she's been unfaithful, causes her to commit adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman also commits adultery." Now, in these couple of verses, Jesus has some powerful things to say about what happens in divorce. And he starts out with some statements that probably don't apply to middle America today. When he says, for example, you've heard the law that says in verse 31, a man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce. He's saying, listen, this whole divorce thing is not as easy as you've made it. I want you to know that this is much more complicated than it looks. And there's something so serious that happens in the life of a married couple that makes it impossible for the divorce to be as easy as just a simple written notice. It takes work. What Jesus is saying here is they made it too easy for divorce to happen in their day, and that should not have been the case. Divorce is not that easy today. And so this doesn't apply to us directly, I think, because we don't live in a culture that has that kind of ease of divorce. We do have a culture that has begun to play games with divorce in other ways. And so there is a lot here for us to say. for us to think about as we listen to what Jesus says about it. The first thing he says, he's wanting to say to us is divorce is not so easy. It requires so much more than the simple writing of a divorce decree that was written in his day, where a person could as easily get a divorce or change partners as having written a simple divorce decree and given it to his wife. Something that he handwrote himself. Now, when Moses had written that original law, Moses was talking to a people that didn't have access to paper and parchment and writing, I guess. Because Moses made a statement that said, if a man is to get divorced, his job would be to give his ex-wife a written paper of divorce. And Jesus said, hey, listen, you people have made this way too easy. It's not this simple. It's not this easy. It requires so much more than a simple agreement to separate. This is to say that marriage is more important than you thought. And it has a higher quality than you thought. And it has a powerful ramification in the life of the husband and the wife in how they do life together. So Jesus was very simply dealing with the ease of divorce that had happened in his day, that had, as technology had progressed, had made it too easy for a man to get a divorce from his wife and to be divorced, to be living in that divorce. It had just become too easy. So Jesus was just saying, hey, listen, it's not that easy. It's not. It doesn't change so fast. When two people have sex, there is a ramification there that is eternal. It is powerful. It has complete ramifications throughout her and his future as well as their history. It's important to them. And it's not as easy as just giving each other a written notice, saying, here's some paper, here's a pen, here's your written notice of divorce, go away. It's not that easy. Jesus is saying, and it shouldn't be treated that easy. And what he's saying to us today is really has huge ramifications on us. He's saying, listen, take marriage seriously. Don't get married on a lark or on a whim or on a bet. Don't get married simply because it's convenient for you. Don't be like that. Think this through and understand its ramifications and understand that marriage should be treated with a lot of respect, with a tremendous amount of honor and dignity. And there's much more involved in a marriage than a husband and a wife. God is involved in that relationship. And he enters into the relationship. Probably we would assume here from Moses' statements, probably through the means of sexuality, God enters in. What we know is that there is never an undoing of the sexual relationship that has happened. It goes on forever. And, you know, we talked today about there's lots of research that says that a man that sleeps with a woman who slept with somebody else is sleeping with all their ex-partners. That's what he's doing. And it's just saying, hey, guys, take this seriously. Understand it seriously. Understand that it has ramifications in your life that are huge and powerful and major in life, and should not be as quickly undone as a simple written notice to each other saying, let's just forget this thing and move on. He's interested in the survivability of marriage. He's very interested, saying, from the beginning, God made husband and wife in a way that a man marries a woman and the two of them are together for life. That's the way it should be. That's the way he designed it and desires it. Now, life is messed up. Life is not that way for a lot of us. We don't have the privilege of telling the person we married what to do or how to do it. We don't. We get to tell ourselves what to do and how to do it. We get to live our own lives before God. But we don't get to tell somebody else how to live life and how to go about life. If there's someone who loves us in 10 or 15 or 20 years, we need to thank God for that moment. Thank God for those moments and choose to respect them and not quickly cast somebody off as simple as a written divorce. Jesus is saying, come on, people, it's just not like this. It's just not like this. It should be handled with great respect and great care. Because God is interested in the survivability and in the careful effort of a marriage. What Jesus is saying is that in his day, the ease of a divorce had gotten too easy. Can I tell you, I don't see that as the case in America today. I don't think that's the issue with marriage that's happening in our world today. And I don't think Jesus would address it differently today. Just saying that we have made divorce too easy, I don't think that would be his deal at all. It would be a different situation, and we get to enjoy a different culture here. We get to watch a different culture here and watch how they treated marriage and what they did about it. That has these huge ramifications. He says in verse 32, "But I say that a man who divorces his wife, unless she's been unfaithful, causes her to commit adultery." Now Jesus is saying, hey, listen, there's an incredible cost associated with marriage that goes on and on and on forever. That incredible cost is that unless a man divorces a wife for specifically godly reasons, which he names here, she's been unfaithful. He's saying, come on, guys, there's an incredible cost to this thing. Don't be so glib about it that you think that it's nothing to you. It is something to you, and it does have a ramification. It does affect you, and it will continue to affect you all of your life. If you marry somebody who has been divorced and has not committed adultery, that is you are causing her to commit adultery right there on the spot. That's what he's saying here. So there's an incredible cost through this whole thing, through the marriage covenant and through all that the marriage is about. That matters to God. It matters a lot. We should avoid divorce. We should not be divorced unless there is an adultery involved. That simply means that unless there's been an adultery in a relationship, most people ought to work it out. They ought to figure it out. They ought to get it going with each other and figure out how to be in love, how to have a great relationship, and how to manage through life in every way. There's just an incredible cost. Divorce should never happen easily or without thinking. It should never happen unless there's been an adultery already because of that incredible cost. That's what he's saying, very simply. Jesus is saying here that if there's been an adultery, I will give you some room. But he's not suggesting that it has to happen even in the case of adultery. He's just saying some hearts get so hard. Some hearts get so unbending at this point. And there's this incredible cost. If there has been an adultery, that would mean that the breaking of the covenant has already happened. And then it's a matter of acknowledging that the covenant is broken and deciding whether or not you want to re-knit it together or whether you want to go your separate ways because the covenant is broken. You decide at that point as if you're in relationship for the first time and don't know. You decide whether or not you want to commit yourself to that other person. But both ways are legitimate, but there is pain in both of those ways in the reconstruction, and there is a permanent cost that's always hurtful to people. So it's about facing that the covenant is broken. In verse 32, he says, and anyone who marries a divorced woman also commits adultery. He's just going on here and saying that if a man thinks he can marry somebody else's wife easily, he could also be committing the adultery in the process, and needs to understand that there is a permanent history installed in a human being. Now, some have chosen to get over that. Some do choose to get over it. Some choose to face those ramifications and deal with that history. And that is fine for you to do. He doesn't have any words to say against that, except to say that you should know each other's sexual history and understand each other well enough when you get married that you have a real resolution of the past as well as the present and the future. You know what you're dealing with. I got to tell you, I've dealt with so many couples over the 20-something years that I've been here as a pastor. So many couples who've been divorced and remarried. They didn't want it that way. It wasn't their doing. It was outside of their jurisdiction, and they accepted it and found a way to move on with their life. They have chosen, for the most part, not to forever be looking back at what happened. They've chosen to look forward. It's the only way to survive. It's the only way to survive it. And understand that if you don't know the sexual history, if you don't know the ramifications of what's happening in somebody's life, you're dooming yourself to continue on the relationship. And he's saying, anyone who marries a divorced woman also commits adultery in verse 32, saying, listen, a divorce is never really over. If the divorce happened for ungodly reasons, the divorce is never really over. It continues to go on and has ongoing ramifications in a person's life that are painful and serious. It lays a permanent record and creates a stain in a person's life. So Jesus is saying, be careful about each other's history. Just be careful and understand that you're not, it's not as simple as you just sleeping with whomever you want, but it has ramifications that are serious in your life. No one wants the marriage. No one goes for it. No one wishes that the marriage be broke up. No one prefers that a marriage end and another one start. That's not the point that he's making. He's saying, I just understand that there is in human history all of this pain associated with it. There's so much pain. And I want you to know that I made a way for you to avoid that pain. Avoid it wherever you can. And don't be part of the simple installation of thoughts and ideas about divorce that make it easy to happen, because a divorce is never over. There's a permanent cost for any breakup and a permanent record of the wrong that is committed in that. If somebody committed adultery on you, my heart goes out to you. I feel for you. You have an enormous amount of pain and difficulty to deal with. I'm told pain unlike anything else in the human experience. And I believe that's probably true just based on years and years and years of counseling with people. Tremendous pain. But he's saying there is a permanent cost for any breakup. And if you haven't had to face it, don't. Avoid it. Avoid it like crazy. Take marriage seriously. Understand that your covenant relationship with another human being is sacred and holy before God, and powerful and passionate to Him. And before you make that relationship with somebody new, know about their past history. Simply have the simple conversations where you know. Are you divorced because there was an event that forced you to get divorced? Or are you divorced simply because you wanted to be? Just because you felt like it. You wrote your partner a written notice of divorce like he says here. And you tried to simply get through it and easily get through it. It's not that easy. And if adultery wasn't involved, it will be when we're together. Understand that. And those ramifications continue to go on in life. They have this passionate, additional, powerful ramification, and that a divorce is never over. It continues to have pain in a person's life. Nobody hates divorce more than somebody who's been through divorce. Nobody. The pain of divorce in our culture is just barely addressed because it's just so painful. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to issue it, so I guess it's left to a former dead guy to say it. Yes, I was in the accident 2 months ago, almost 3 months ago, and I did have bleeding in my brain, and an ambulance worker told a friend of mine I probably wouldn't make it to the hospital and all of that stuff. I get that. So let me just say some things that need to be said. It's not the divorce that's the sin. It's the divorce for ungodly reasons that are the sin, and are the passionate purpose of Jesus Christ in mentioning. He's just saying, people, I want you to know there's so much pain involved here if you haven't taken the time to know the sexual history of somebody and know what they're about. Take your time with marriage and be careful about it. And when you make a covenant, make it for good reason. Not for the simple and flimsy reasons that people make covenants where they just say, let me try this for a while. Let me have a go at this. Let me see what happens here. None of that. Come on, make the decision for a good and godly reason. And let me tell you, as a former dead guy who was in an ambulance, and lots of things were supposed to occur that didn't. Whatever. Let me just tell you, Jesus is saying, hey people, this has ramification in our lives that is huge and serious. And divorce is never over. It has an ongoing implication that is painful and passionate and permanent. And you ought to have that conversation between the two of you to know what it is that you're going to have to deal with. I deal with divorced couples all the time. It's sort of what I do. Our church has many of them in where they have gone to be reclaimed, many of them, and to find their way back to normalcy and health. All I can tell you is in the small groups that I'm in, the divorced couples don't want to talk about their ex. They don't want to talk about what they were like in bed and all of those things. They don't want to talk about that. They just want to get on with the marriage that is now, no matter what the past history was. They just want to get on with the marriage that is now and move into the future that God has for them. And here Jesus is making some very simple statements about it, saying, I'll make this a lot easier for you. You've heard the law that says a man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce. I'm telling you, it's not that easy. He says in verse 32, he says, but I say that a man who divorces his wife, unless she has been unfaithful, causes her to commit adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. What Jesus is saying is serious enough that he's hoping that we who are married take our marriage as a treasure and as a value that only God can give. That we treasure it and value it and treat it with great respect under God. Because what he's given us is powerful and huge and has the internal ramifications for our good in it. Yes, you're married to somebody not like you. God meant it that way. And he meant it that way because he was trying to chip off some of those rough edges about who you are that will make you different and more godly if you yield to him. Yield to him today and trust him with your relationship.
We began attending Freedom Valley 17 years ago. Little did I know that the moment I walked in Freedom Valley's doors that I would be a changed person. My relationship with my father is so much different than when we first started attending Freedom Valley. I'm one of 6 children, and I think my biggest thing living at home was I never had someone I could depend on. I didn't think I mattered to him. I wasn't a priority, and I struggled with that. I was always told I was a daddy's girl, but as I grew older, I didn't see it because I didn't know him that well, and I never had anybody. I really didn't think he cared for me. I didn't like some of the things that happened at home, but I couldn't control them. I remember coming in many services and listening to Jerry and the sermons, and I struggled many times with Father's Days because I never knew how to respond on Father's Day because God commands us to honor our father and mother, and I wanted to, but I just didn't know how. And then the next level, another level would be I needed to forgive, and how can I forgive someone who's wronged me? And even if it wasn't my fault, I'm still supposed to forgive. But deep down, I still wanted to do that. I had a desire. I needed to be obedient, and him and I were talking, and I knew we had words, and I hung up on the phone, and immediately God told me, you haven't forgiven him for never being there for you. So immediately I called him up and I told him I forgave him. And we both were crying, but that started the process of forgiveness. And Jerry mentioned many times where it's a process. Just because I said I forgave him didn't mean I forgot. But what's really cool is that did start our process, and I can say today I don't even think of my childhood. Our relationship is so much better, and we're making our new memories. I don't have many memories of growing up as a young girl, but we're building new memories now. When we first attended Freedom Valley, it was Wayne, myself, and our son Luke, and he was around five or six. And we always wanted more children. We desired to have more children, but it never happened. But one day when I was sitting in the office, my friend Alice Ritter came in like she always did and just visit, and she came right out of the blue and asked, "Did you only want to have one child?" And I remember looking at her with like a shock on my face. It was like, "What? No, we wanted more children. It just hasn't happened." And she looked at me and said, "Well, I'm going to pray." And that was the first time that I heard those words that someone's going to pray for me to have another baby. But it also brought the point out to me that we need to make our requests known to people and have people praying for us. And so we did. We talked to Jerry and Julie, and they were gracious and willing to pray with us. And 1 month later, I was pregnant, but we lost that one. And then a year later, I was able to get pregnant, and we had a healthy little boy. And Bryce is 11 years old now, so we're just so thankful. Wayne and I both came from large families. He was one of 7 and I was one of 6, and we always wanted to have more children. And so we decided about 6 years ago or so to go into foster care, and so we've been fostering children since then, and we've had maybe 30 children that came through our doors in our home that God has blessed us with. Over the years of fostering, God kept reminding me that Freedom Valley is why we're doing foster care. These kids are being touched every week by the helpers, the teachers in kids ministry and in youth, and they're getting Jesus, whether they're with us for 10 days or a year or 2 years. If someone would ask me to describe Freedom Valley with one word, it would have been love. I remember the first time someone had told me that they loved me, and I remember thinking, how can you love me? You don't even know me. And I'd never heard those words very much. And I remember the moment God, it was like a light bulb came on, and he said, that's my love for you. They're expressing my love. My love is unconditional. There's no conditions, and I always thought you had to earn someone's love. Now when I see people, I kind of chuckle because I extend the handshake, or I'm ready to initiate the hug, or even say I love you, and only God can do that in someone's heart. This is what God has done in my life so far, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do next.
Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate you being with me on the Best Stuff Jesus Taught as I work through some difficult material and some powerful insight he had about the human race and how we work. This one is about the relationships of people. And we're going to work through the relationships throughout this entire series. Love to have you with me. Love to hear from you. You could write me at g@freedomvalley.org or write the church, Freedom Valley Church, 3185 York Road, Pennsylvania, 17325. We would love to hear from you, whatever you got to say. Thanks for watching.